Can a video game really push someone over the edge? Introduce the unthinkable tragedy of a teenage boy who committed an unforgivable act all because his parents took away his game. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story will shake you to your core. Logan Andrews was just like any other 15-year-old kid growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. He had dreams, he had friends, and more than anything else in the world, he had basketball. Every morning before school, you'd find him on the driveway, shooting hoops until his mom called him in for breakfast. Every afternoon, he'd be at practice, running drills until the sun went down. Basketball wasn't just a hobby for Logan, it was his identity. It was who he was. But in December 2006, everything changed. Logan and his friends took a winter break trip to a ski resort in Colorado. It was supposed to be fun, just a bunch of teenagers goofing around in the snow, racing down slopes, throwing snowballs, living their best lives. Logan had never been skiing before, but he was athletic and confident. What could go wrong? On the second day, while racing down an intermediate slope, Logan lost control. He hit a patch of ice, his skis twisted, and he went flying into a tree at full speed. The impact was devastating. When the ski patrol reached him, he couldn't feel his legs. At the hospital, the doctors delivered the crushing news. Logan had severely injured his spine. The damage was serious, so serious that any further trauma could leave him paralyzed for life. No more running, no more jumping, no more basketball, ever. For a kid whose entire world revolved around sports, it was like a death sentence. Logan returned home in a wheelchair, broken in more ways than one. But his nightmare wasn't over yet. A few weeks later, he developed a staph infection from the hospital. His body, already weak from the injury, couldn't fight it off easily. He became bedridden, too sick and fragile to even leave the house. His parents pulled him out of school, and he started being homeschooled by a tutor who came twice a week. The isolation was suffocating. His friends moved on with their lives. The basketball team kept playing without him. Logan spent his days staring at the ceiling, trapped in his own body, trapped in his own mind, drowning in loneliness and frustration. Months crawled by like this, but eventually his health started to improve. The infection cleared up. He regained some mobility, though doctors still warned him to be extremely careful. And slowly, his parents began letting him leave the house again, mostly to visit his best friend, Trevor, who lived a few streets over. And that's where Logan discovered something that would change his life forever. One afternoon at Trevor's house, while the two of them were hanging out in the basement, Trevor fired up his Xbox and loaded a game called Halo. Logan had played video games before, mostly sports games with his dad, stuff like NBA Live, but he'd never experienced anything like this. It was a first-person shooter, intense and immersive, where you battled alien armies across distant planets. The action was fast. The graphics were stunning. And for the first time since the accident, Logan felt alive. He was hooked instantly. At first, it was just a fun way to pass the time, but soon it became more than that. It became an escape. When Logan played Halo, he wasn't a disabled kid in a broken body. He wasn't the guy who lost everything. He was a hero, a soldier, unstoppable. In the game, he had control. In the game, he had power. And he couldn't get enough. He started playing for hours at a time, 4 hours, 6 hours, sometimes even 10 or 12. He'd skip meals, ignore his tutor, blow off his physical therapy exercises. All he wanted to do was play. His parents started to notice the change. He was distant, irritable, obsessed, but they didn't know the half of it yet. Because Logan's obsession was only just beginning. By the spring of 2007, Logan's life had become consumed by one thing, Halo. He wasn't just playing the game anymore, he was living in it. Sometimes he'd log 18 hours in a single day, only stopping to scarf down a bowl of cereal or use the bathroom before diving right back in. His eyes were always bloodshot. His skin had gone pale. He barely slept. His parents, Richard and Catherine Andrews, were growing increasingly worried. Richard was the minister at Cornerstone Baptist Church, a well-respected man in their community who preached about discipline, faith, and family values every Sunday. Catherine taught Sunday school and volunteered at the church food bank. They were good people, devout Christians who believed in raising their son the right way. And when they finally discovered what Logan was spending all his time playing, they were horrified. One evening, Catherine walked into Logan's room unannounced and saw what was on the screen: explosions, gunfire, aliens being blown apart in graphic detail. She was stunned. This was the kind of violence they worked so hard to keep out of their home. She immediately called Richard, and together they confronted their son. "This ends now," Richard said firmly. "No violent games in this house, not ever." Logan tried to argue. He tried to explain that it was just a game, that it didn't mean anything, that it was helping him cope with everything he'd lost. But his parents wouldn't hear it. To them, this wasn't about coping. It was about corruption. They believed these games were poisoning his mind, pulling him away from God, turning him into someone they didn't recognize. "Find something else to do with your time," Catherine said gently. "Read your Bible, spend time with the family, but this game, it's not welcome here." Logan was furious. They didn't understand. They'd never understand. For weeks, he simmered in resentment, playing at Trevor's house whenever he could, but feeling more and more trapped at home. And then, in September 2007, everything came to a head. Halo 3 was released. It was the biggest game launch of the year, and everyone was talking about it. Logan wanted it desperately. He needed it. But he knew his parents would never allow it. So one night, he made a decision. He grabbed $70 he'd saved up from birthday money, waited until his parents were asleep, and quietly slipped out of his bedroom window. He walked 3 miles to the nearest GameStop, bought the game, and walked back home with it clutched in his hands like a treasure. He felt victorious. He'd finally done it. He had his game. But when he climbed back through his window, his mother was standing there waiting for him. "What is that, Logan?" Catherine asked, her voice trembling. He tried to hide it behind his back, but it was too late. She saw the box. She saw the title. And within minutes, Richard was in the room too, his face red with anger. "I can't believe you disobeyed us like this," Richard said. His voice low and dangerous. "After everything we've done for you." He snatched the game out of Logan's hands, stormed into the master bedroom, and locked it inside a small metal safe in the closet, the same safe where he kept important documents and his .9 handgun. He pocketed the key on his personal keychain, right next to his car keys. "You're not getting this back," Richard said coldly. "Not now, not ever." Logan felt something crack inside him. The rage that had been building for months, maybe even since the accident, finally began to boil over. For the next few weeks, the tension in the house was unbearable. Every conversation ended in an argument. Every look felt like an accusation. And then one night, it all exploded. Logan and Richard got into a screaming match in the kitchen. Logan demanded his game back. Richard refused. The argument grew louder, uglier, until finally Richard gave his son an ultimatum. "You have 2 choices," Richard said, his voice shaking. "You can give up these violent games and live by our rules under our roof, or you can leave, but you can't have both." Logan didn't even hesitate. "Fine," he spat, "I'll leave." And he did. He packed a bag and went to stay at Trevor's house for the weekend. Trevor's parents didn't care what the boys did, so Logan and Trevor played Halo 3 nonstop, 16, 17, 18 hours a day. It was everything Logan had dreamed of. No rules, no lectures, just the game. But even in the middle of all that freedom, Logan couldn't stop thinking about one thing. His parents had taken his copy of Halo 3. They had no right. They'd humiliated him, controlled him, treated him like a child. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a dark, twisted plan began to form. He was going to get his game back. And he was going to make them pay. Logan returned home a few days later. Maybe his parents thought he'd cooled off. Maybe they thought the weekend away had taught him a lesson. Or maybe they just wanted their son back, hoping things could somehow return to normal. Whatever the reason, Logan was allowed back into the house. But nothing was normal, and Logan hadn't forgiven them. He just smiled, he said the right things, he played the part of the obedient son, and he waited. A few nights later, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Richard came home from church council meetings and did what he always did. He dropped his keys on the kitchen counter and headed to the living room to unwind. Catherine was already there, flipping through the TV guide. The Cincinnati Reds were playing that night, and they were both looking forward to watching the game together. Logan watched from the hallway as his father set those keys down, and the moment Richard and Catherine settled onto the couch, Logan made his move. He crept into the kitchen, grabbed the keychain, and quietly walked to his parents' bedroom. His hands were shaking as he unlocked the safe in the closet. Inside, he found exactly what he was looking for, his copy of Halo 3 sitting right there on top. But he didn't just take the game. He also took his father's 9mm handgun. Logan walked back toward the living room, the weight of the gun heavy in his hand. His heart was pounding, his mind was racing, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. This had gone too far. Richard and Catherine were sitting side by side on the couch, relaxed and unsuspecting. The pregame show was just starting. Logan stepped into the doorway. "Hey, Mom, Dad," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Close your eyes, I have a surprise for you." Catherine smiled. "A surprise? Oh, honey, what is it?" "Just close your eyes," Logan insisted. They exchanged a glance, then both closed their eyes, smiling like it was all just a sweet family moment. And that's when Logan raised the gun. Bang! The shot exploded through the room. Richard's head snapped back as the bullet tore through his face. He collapsed onto the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Catherine's eyes flew open in horror. She screamed. Bang, bang, bang. 3 more shots. Catherine slumped forward, her body going limp. She was gone instantly. For a moment, Logan just stood there, staring at what he'd done. His mother was dead. His father was bleeding out on the floor, barely breathing, and in his other hand, he was still holding his copy of Halo 3. He had to think fast. He knelt down beside Richard's body and tried to press the gun into his father's hand, trying to stage it like Richard had shot Catherine in some kind of murder-suicide. But his hands were shaking too badly. He couldn't get it right. And then ding-dong. The doorbell. Logan's blood ran cold. He stood up, shoved the gun into his waistband, and stumbled to the front door. When he opened it, his heart sank. It was his older sister, Vanessa, and her husband, Kyle. They'd been invited over to watch the baseball game. "Hey, Logan," Vanessa said with a smile. "Mom and Dad ready?" "No," Logan blurted out, blocking the doorway. "You can't come in there. They're fighting. It's bad. You should just go." Vanessa frowned. "Fighting? Mom and Dad never fight." "Well, they are tonight," Logan said, his voice rising. "Just leave, please." But then, from inside the house, they heard it. A low, guttural moan. Richard was still alive, barely, and he was trying to call for help. "What was that?" Kyle said, his face going pale. Before Logan could stop them, Vanessa and Kyle pushed past him and rushed into the living room. And they saw everything. Vanessa screamed. Kyle immediately lunged at Logan, wrestling the gun out of his hands and pinning him against the wall. Vanessa, sobbing hysterically, grabbed her phone and called 911. Logan didn't fight back. He just stood there, numb, as the reality of what he'd done began to sink in. But then, in a moment that would haunt everyone forever, Logan broke free from Kyle's grip, grabbed his copy of Halo 3 off the coffee table, and ran out the front door. He jumped into the family van, started the engine, and peeled out of the driveway. He was heading to Trevor's house. Even after everything, after shooting both his parents, after destroying his family, Logan's only thought was, "I just want to play my game." The police caught up to him less than 10 minutes later. He didn't resist. He didn't try to run. He just sat there in the driver's seat, clutching that game case, tears streaming down his face. At trial, Logan was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Richard survived, though the bullet left him partially blind and permanently disfigured. He would never be the same. Catherine was buried 3 days later. And Logan, he never got to play Halo 3. This wasn't really about a video game. It never was. It was about a boy who lost everything, his health, his dreams, his sense of control, and let that pain twist into something dark and unforgivable. It was about isolation, obsession, and a rage that built up until there was nothing left but destruction. A mother is gone. A father is scarred for life. A sister lost her family, and a young man threw away his entire future. All because he couldn't let go. What do you think? Could this tragedy have been prevented? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story affected you, please share it, because sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we need to hear the most. Thanks for watching.